I gave my son and his wife the down payment for their first house, but when the papers came through, they'd put her mother's name on the deed instead of mine. Not mine, hers. And I didn't find out until the ink was dry, and the moving truck had already come and gone. My name is Brittany McCain. I'm 70 years old. I live just outside Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in the same brick house my late husband Denny and I bought back in 1981. 3 bedrooms, yellow shutters, a carport we never finished enclosing. It creaks when it rains, and the thermostat sticks sometimes, but it's home. Denny passed 3 years ago. He was a pipe fitter, 42 years on the job, mostly with the same company. They sent flowers to the funeral. Roses. He always said roses were a waste of money, but I saved a few petals anyway. I keep them in a glass jar by my bed. After he passed, I kept myself busy. Church, quilting group, the occasional afternoon shift at the thrift store when they needed someone to sort linens. I didn't go out much, but I wasn't quite ready to feel forgotten either. I have one child, Albert. He's 38 now. Works in logistics, whatever that means these days. He met Rosemary about 6 years ago. Pretty girl. Polished, soft voice, works remote doing digital marketing, or something close enough. She always looked like she stepped out of a catalog. Never a hair out of place. They got married in 2021. Small backyard wedding at her cousin's place. No band, no dancing, but plenty of charcuterie. I remember Denny would have hated it. Too quiet, too curated. But Albert looked happy, and I kept my thoughts to myself. Last spring, Albert called me up one afternoon. "Mom, we found a house," he said, voice all excited. It was a little 3-bedroom in Franklin. White shutters, big yard, nothing too fancy, but a good starter place. They were short on the down payment. He asked if I could help. I didn't even blink. "I'll give you 45, I said. It was most of what I had set aside from Denny's life insurance and the small mutual fund I'd been slowly cashing out. I had 60 in total. I figured I'd leave the rest for emergencies and house repairs. Albert said, "Mom, are you sure?" And I said, "Of course I'm sure. You're my only boy." He got quiet, like he was holding his breath. "Rosemary says thank you. She says this means everything." I told him the money was a gift. I didn't want it back. I didn't want to make things complicated. I just asked one thing. Just one. I said, "Put my name somewhere on the deed. Doesn't need to be first. Doesn't need to be big. Just something. So there's a record. Not for control, just for peace of mind." He said, "Of course." I didn't think twice about it. Albert had always been a good boy. Grew up respectful. Hard worker. Never talked back. Never made a mess. Maybe too quiet sometimes, but he'd always been kind to me. The bank sent over a document called a gift letter. Rosemary emailed it to me. I printed it out at the UPS store and signed it. No lawyer. No questions. A few weeks passed. I got updates. Photos of paint samples, texts about inspection dates, questions about whether the water heater looked old. I felt like part of it. I'd done something good. Then, about 6 weeks later, a thick envelope came in the mail. Their names were on the return address. I smiled as I opened it, thinking it was a thank you card. Maybe a framed picture of the new house. Instead, it was paperwork. Copies of closing documents. That's when I saw it. The deed listed 2 names. Albert McCain. Lydia Nichols. Not Brittany McCain. Lydia, Rosemary's mother. I stared at it for so long my tea went cold. Thought maybe I was reading it wrong. But there it was, clear as day. I flipped through the pages, hoping to find something that explained it. Nothing. Just signatures, typed lines, a notarized stamp. No Brittany. No Mom. I sat at the kitchen table for over an hour. Didn't move. Didn't cry. Just kept reading that line, over and over, like maybe the meaning would change if I stared hard enough. Eventually, I picked up my phone. I didn't call Albert. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too bad. Instead, I texted, "Got the deed. Thought we agreed. I'd be listed." No answer. A few hours later, I got a reply. Just 4 words. "Can we talk later?" That was it. I didn't sleep much that night, or the night after. I started thinking back to every moment over the past few months. Every little shift in Albert's tone. The way Rosemary always said "we" when talking about decisions, but never looked at me when she did. And now, her mother owned part of the house I paid for. Maybe not all of it. Maybe just on paper. But paper is what matters when the time comes. I didn't want the house. I wasn't trying to move in or take control. I just wanted to be remembered, protected, acknowledged, and somehow I'd been left out, not forgotten, removed. That's a different kind of pain. So I'll ask you something. Have you ever given from the heart and ended up feeling like a stranger to your own family? If that's ever been you, subscribe. Not for me. Do it for every woman who's quietly held things together, only to be left out when it mattered. And if it hasn't been you, if you think I'm overreacting, then scroll down and tell me why I'm wrong. I want to understand. After the deed showed up with Lydia's name on it instead of mine, I told myself to stay calm. I didn't want to make a mess of things. Didn't want to be that mom, the one who gets labeled bitter or controlling. I figured I'd give Albert a little time. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe there was more to the story than I knew. So I kept showing up. I brought over a new casserole, dish the first weekend they moved in. Red ceramic, just like Rosemary had on her registry, but never got. She smiled and said thank you, but didn't unwrap it right away. Just set it on the counter like it was an Amazon box she'd open later. I made banana bread the next Sunday, the kind with chopped walnuts like Albert always liked. Rosemary said she was allergic. I hadn't known. She wrapped it in foil and placed it in the fridge like she was filing it away, not feeding her family with it. Still, I kept coming. I offered to help unpack. They told me it was mostly done. I brought over cleaning supplies for the bathrooms. A basket with fresh sponges, paper towels, a bottle of lavender spray. And Rosemary said, "Oh, we're more of an organic household." I said, "That's fine, honey. Just toss what you don't use." She didn't laugh. Instead of letting it harden between us, I invited them to my place. Sunday dinner. No pressure, just a meal. Albert texted that they'd try to make it. Try. They used to come every week without asking. Now, I was penciled in like a side appointment. They came that first Sunday, though, brought a little bouquet from the grocery store, sat stiff at the kitchen table like they were in someone else's house. Albert picked at his food. Rosemary scrolled her phone while I brought out dessert, said she had to check her step tracker. I smiled, nodded, offered seconds, pretended everything was fine. But it wasn't. The week after, I stopped by their place just to drop off some mail. A magazine Albert had forgotten to update the address on. Lydia's car was in the driveway. Again, second time that week. I knocked, waited, no answer. I peeked through the window, not being nosy, just concerned. I saw her sitting at the kitchen table with Rosemary laughing over something on a laptop. I backed away, drove home slow. Maybe it was nothing. But then it happened again, and again. Every time I passed their house, Lydia's car was there, always parked in the same spot, like she lived there. Then came the cookout. Albert invited me and a few others over for a small get-together in the backyard. Folding chairs, burgers, paper plates. Felt nice for a while. Familiar. I was talking with one of Rosemary's cousins by the lemonade table when I heard it. Lydia was giving a little tour to someone new. I heard her voice plain as day say, "And this is our guest room." Our. I looked up, expecting someone to correct her. No one did. I don't know if they didn't hear her or just didn't care. Later, I asked Albert gently, "Is Lydia staying with y'all for a bit?" He rubbed the back of his neck and said, "She's just been helping out a lot. It's been great having her close. Someone local." I nodded, even though my house was only 26 minutes away. I said, "Well, I'm here too." He gave me that tight little smile he does when he doesn't want to have a conversation. Rosemary came over just then and said they had to go back inside and check on the side dishes. She kissed the air next to my cheek and pulled Albert away. I stayed by the lemonade. I felt small, not unwanted exactly, just unnecessary. I didn't say anything to them that night. I didn't bring it up in a text later. I didn't send a long email trying to explain how it felt to be slowly replaced by someone else's mother in a house I helped pay for. Instead, I went home and pulled out an old spiral notebook, started writing things down, the dates I brought food, the things that were said, when Lydia's car was in the driveway, how many times Albert canceled Sunday dinner. I didn't do it to build a case. I did it because I needed to see it for myself. Because when someone pulls away slow, you start wondering if it's real or if you're just being sensitive. But when you write it down, it becomes real. Black ink on white paper doesn't lie. And that notebook started filling up faster than I expected. One night I wrote, "Today, Rosemary said, Lydia always knows what to do with home projects." Then she looked at me and asked if I'd ever used a nail gun before. I laughed when I wrote it, a dry laugh, like an old drawer that won't close right. Another page. Albert said he's just trying to keep everyone happy. I asked, "Even me?" He didn't answer. And another. They posted a photo of the front porch. Caption read, "Mom helped us hang these." It wasn't me in the picture. I stared at that line a long time. They didn't even bother to tag me. So I kept writing, because words were all I had left to hold on to. If you've ever stayed quiet just to avoid being called the difficult one, hit that like button. And if you think silence is weakness, if you believe I should have spoken up sooner, then tell me in the comments. What would you have done? The notebook helped me hold things in place for a little while. But eventually, I needed more than pages. I needed the truth. Not pieces, not hints, the full picture. So one Tuesday morning, I drove into Franklin and walked into the county clerk's office. It was a plain building, brick, low to the ground, across from a tire shop. I'd passed it 100 times without thinking. But that day, I parked, turned off the engine, and sat in the car a minute. I had that feeling in my chest, like something was shifting and couldn't be undone. Inside, the clerk behind the counter wore glasses on a chain and a warm smile. I told her I needed a copy of the deed for a home at 213 Meadow Creek Lane. I said it calmly, like I wasn't holding my breath. She typed for a while, then asked, "Are you the homeowner?" I said, "No, but I provided the down payment, and I'm listed as an interested party." That part wasn't exactly true, but I hoped it would be enough. She nodded. "Do you have the parcel number?" I didn't, but she looked it up anyway. A few minutes later, she printed off a copy, stapled it, slid it across the counter. I thanked her and took it to the bench near the front window. I didn't even open it right away. I just stared at it. Then I unfolded the pages. And there it was, clear as sunlight. Albert James McCain and Lydia Joan Nichols, joint owners. No mention of me. Not as a gift contributor. Not as an interested party. Not as anything. Just those two names. The date matched the closing week Albert had told me about. It wasn't a mistake. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd left me out on purpose. I drove home in silence, didn't turn on the radio, didn't call anyone. When I pulled into my driveway, I just sat there, hands still on the wheel. That kind of hurt isn't loud. It doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It's the kind that seeps in slow. You feel it in your bones before it ever touches your face. Inside, I placed the papers on the kitchen table. I didn't sit down. I just stood over them, looking, trying to make sense of it. That house exists because I opened my checkbook, because I signed that gift letter, because I took nearly everything Denny left me and handed it over with a trusting heart. And now Lydia was the one who had her name on it. Like I never mattered. Like I was just a wallet that came with a smile. I felt a tear slip down without warning, wiped it fast, didn't want to give it that power. But then another came, and another. And before I knew it, I was sitting on the floor, back against the cabinet, knees pulled to my chest. Not angry, just tired. I thought about Albert when he was 9. The winter he caught pneumonia. He'd been in the hospital for 4 nights, hooked to machines, pale, barely speaking. I stayed in that room the whole time. Didn't go home to shower. Didn't change my clothes. I just sat by his bed, holding his hand, praying. The nurse had brought me a little plastic cup of Jell-O and told me to eat something. I told her I'd eat when he did. He finally woke up on the 5th morning and asked if I could make him toast. And I cried so hard I scared him. That's what motherhood looks like. It's not flowers on birthdays or Mother's Day brunch. It's staying in a stiff chair for 4 nights, whispering into a boy's ear that he's going to be okay, when you don't know if he will be. And now that boy was a grown man, and my name wasn't even on the piece of paper that proved I helped build his new life. I picked myself up off the floor, slowly went into the living room, sat on the couch, and called Albert. It rang twice, then straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I waited 30 minutes, tried again. Nothing. An hour later, I got a text, just 1 line. Can we talk another time? I didn't reply. What was there to say? When someone says another time, enough, what they really mean is never when it matters. I looked down at my hands. Denny used to say I had strong hands, could crack walnuts and fix a zipper in the same day. Now, they just trembled. I picked up the deed again, read it twice, folded it neatly, placed it in a folder, and added it to the drawer where I'd started keeping the notebook. That's when it hit me. If your name can be erased from a document, can your memory be erased from a life? If you believe mothers deserve more than that, hit subscribe. And if you don't, tell me why in the comments. I'll read every word. A few days after I filed the deed away, I found a white envelope tucked between the screen door and the frame. No stamp, no address, just my name on the front in neat handwriting. At first, I thought it was something from the church, maybe a card from the quilt ministry or one of the ladies who'd heard I hadn't been around. But inside was a typed note on plain paper. It was from Deacon Rivers, the young man who grew up 2 houses down. His mama, Miss Gloria, still lived there. Deacon worked for a title company out in Brentwood, last I heard. The letter started like this. Mrs. McCain, I hope this isn't overstepping, but I think you deserve some clarity. I helped handle your son's property paperwork through the closing office. At the time, I assumed you were aware of how the deed was being filed. I later realized that may not have been the case. He didn't say much else, just left a phone number and wrote, if you'd like to see the original filing instructions, I still have access. I'm happy to walk you through it. I read it twice. Then I folded it back into the envelope, set it on the kitchen counter, and stood there staring at the phone for a good 10 minutes. I didn't want to look like I was digging, but the truth is, I needed to know. I called him later that afternoon. Mrs. McCain, He said kindly, "I've been meaning to reach out, but I wasn't sure how." I told him I appreciated the note. I asked if what I saw on the final deed matched what was filed originally. He said yes. And then he added something that stopped me cold. He said, "The instructions came directly from Rosemary. Lydia's name was added about 2 weeks before closing. There was a line on the form where an additional owner could be listed. Rosemary filled it in. I saw her signature myself." I didn't say anything right away. He went on, "At the time, I thought maybe it was a blended family situation. I assumed you were part of the conversation, but after I saw you at the courthouse and how surprised you looked, I realized maybe you weren't. I asked if I could come by and take a look at the files." He said, "Of course." The next morning, I drove out to the title company where Deacon worked. Small office, quiet lot next to a dental clinic. He met me at the door, offered coffee, and led me to a little desk in the back. He pulled out a folder and opened it slowly. There, clipped to the front, was the signed deed request. Albert's name, Lydia's name, and Rosemary's handwriting all over the margins. She'd written, "Please ensure Lydia Nichols is included on title with Albert. This has already been discussed and approved." No mention of me, not even a reference. Deacon turned the page and pointed to a date. This was filed 13 days before closing. Final paperwork came through 5 days later. Then he looked at me and said something I won't forget. "You were generous, not stupid." I nodded, but I couldn't get the tightness out of my chest. "I just don't understand," I said quietly. He didn't try to explain it away. He didn't say, "Maybe there was a reason, or you should ask them." Instead, he said, "Some folks know how to receive a blessing. Others forget who handed it to them." Before I left, he asked if I wanted a copy of the notarized deed. "Just in case you ever need to protect yourself," he said. I told him yes. He scanned it, put it on a thumb drive, and handed it to me like it was something sacred. And in a way it was. Not because I was planning to fight, not because I wanted revenge, but because it was proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined it, that what I felt was real. I thanked Deacon and drove home. I placed the thumb drive in the same drawer as the notebook and the printed deed, and I sat at the kitchen table for a while, just watching the clock tick. The pain wasn't as sharp that day. It was duller, heavier, like something that had settled into place. They hadn't just changed the plan. They'd changed it behind my back. And not once did anyone think to tell me. Not Albert, not Rosemary. They made the decision, carried it through, and left me smiling at their front door with banana bread and paper towels while Lydia signed her name to my sacrifice. And I keep thinking about that word. Ours. How Lydia said, "Our guest room," that day in the backyard. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she really believes it's her house now, too. What's worse, betrayal or being made to feel like you imagined it? If you've ever been quietly erased, leave a comment. I know I'm not the only one. The call came late. I just finished rinsing my dinner plate when my phone rang. Albert's name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a second before answering. "Hey, Mom." His voice was short. Tired, maybe, or trying not to sound bothered. "I've been meaning to call you," he said. I didn't say anything right away. I let the silence hang, just long enough. He went on. "Look, I know there's been some confusion about the house." I took a breath. Not confusion. I got a copy of the deed. From the courthouse. I know who's listed on it. A pause. Then, in a tone too practiced, he said, "Lydia co-signed for us. It was a credit thing. That's all." It was the first time he'd ever outright lied to me. And I knew it. I'd seen the paperwork. Talked to Deacon. Lydia didn't co-sign anything. Her name was put on as a co-owner, not a guarantor, not a fallback. She owned part of the house, just like him. And I didn't. I kept my voice calm. Albert, did you even consider putting my name on it? Another long silence. He exhaled hard, then said, Rosemary didn't think it was appropriate. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just that. Rosemary didn't think it was appropriate. I could feel my fingers curling into my palm, but I didn't raise my voice. Do you? I asked. Do you think it was appropriate? He mumbled something I didn't catch. Something about how things got rushed. I didn't press. I didn't want to drag it out. I just wanted to help. I said, that's all I ever wanted. I know, he said. We appreciate it. But the words felt like a receipt, like something you say when someone hands you change, not when someone empties their savings, so you can start a new life. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just said, I need to go now. And I hung up, not out of anger, out of clarity. That was the moment I finally saw it for what it was. I'd been holding on to a picture in my mind, one where I was still in the room, still part of the family, still seen. But that wasn't the picture Albert and Rosemary were painting. They had drawn me out of the frame a long time ago. I walked into the guest room and pulled the plastic bin from the closet, started packing, not to leave, to prepare. Photo albums, birth certificates, Denny's discharge papers, the deed to my own home, insurance policies, Social Security papers. All of it went into the box, not out of panic, but because I realized I needed to protect what was still mine. I found our old family Bible at the bottom of the hope chest, leather-bound, edges worn. I flipped it open and a small folded paper slipped out. A note from Denny, his handwriting, crooked from age, but still strong. He'd tucked it between the Psalms and the bookmarks. It read, what we build with love should never be handed over in fear. I sat there on the edge of the bed and read that line 6 times. Denny always knew how to cut through everything. He built our life one check at a time. He fixed pipes during storms, missed birthdays to keep the lights on. And I tried to carry that same spirit forward, quietly, with grace, with trust. But trust, when handed to the wrong people, turns into something else. Something heavy. I folded the note and placed it back in the Bible. Then I added the Bible to the box. And I stood up taller than I had in weeks. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel defeated either. I just felt clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision. And now I had to make my own. Would you keep trying to be part of a family that's already chosen someone else to replace you? Hit subscribe if you know what that kind of heartbreak feels like. Or tell me in the comments why I should try harder. I'll listen. A few days after the call with Albert, I woke up to a message on my landline. It was Harold Dillard, Denny's old friend. He and Denny worked together for years at the plant before Harold went back to school and became an estate attorney. He kept things short. Said, Brittany, when you've got time, come by my office. There's something your husband wanted me to hold on to for you. That was it. I didn't rush. I let a day pass. Then another. I wasn't sure I had the strength for any more surprises. But something about the way Harold said it, calm, steady, made me believe it wasn't bad news. So Friday morning, I drove over to his office in Tullahoma, little building tucked behind the post office. Looked more like a tax shop than a lawyer's office. When I walked in, Harold stood and smiled. Same strong jaw, same thick glasses. He hadn't changed much. He hugged me gently. Come on back, he said, leading me to a room with wood-paneled walls and a big desk covered in manila folders. We sat down. He didn't waste time. I've been holding this since right after Denny passed. He said he asked me not to mention it unless certain things happened. I raised my eyebrows. What kind of things? Harold slid a small folder across the desk. He told me, if you ever found yourself shut out, especially by Albert, I'd know when the time was right to tell you. I didn't say anything. I just opened the folder. Inside was a document labeled McCain Trust, sole beneficiary, Brittany Jean McCain. Harold explained that Denny had created it quietly, using funds from an old retirement account Denny never talked about. It held just over $80,000. And that wasn't all. There was a deed for a piece of property, a small cabin just outside Bell Buckle, Tennessee. I stared at the address. I didn't even know we owned anything else. Harold nodded. He bought it in cash 5 years before he died. Had it cleaned up, furnished, ready. I looked up. Why didn't he ever tell me? Harold leaned forward because he knew you wouldn't need it unless things changed, and he hoped they never would. I felt something settle in my chest. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't even relief. It was confirmation. That Denny had seen something, felt it, that maybe he knew Albert would drift, that Rosemary's presence would grow too large, that Lydia would eventually fill a space I was never supposed to give up. And instead of telling me all that, Denny just quietly made away. Harold handed me a key. To the cabin, he said, and there's a separate box of papers stored there. He wrote that you'd know when to open it. I turned the key in my hand. Small, brass, cold. Why didn't he just tell me? I asked again. Harold's voice softened. Because Denny respected you, and he didn't want to make you doubt your own son unless you had no choice. We sat there a moment. Then Harold added something else. You don't owe them an explanation, Brittany. Not about this. Not about anything. Let truth do its own walking. That stuck with me. I signed the paperwork Harold needed. He said he'd get the trust information sent to my bank, but that everything was locked down. No one else had access. No way for it to be touched or changed unless I allowed it. Before I left, he handed me an envelope. Denny's handwriting just said, "Open when your heart is heavier than your hands." I didn't open it. Not yet. I placed it in my purse next to the key and walked out into the afternoon sun. The air was still. The sky was wide. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt held, not by people, but by the love of a man who planned ahead, a man who watched the way things were shifting, and instead of trying to fix it, he just made sure I wouldn't fall. If someone prepared for your heartbreak before it even happened, would you call that love? Subscribe if you've ever been protected without realizing it. And if not, comment what you do with that kind of blessing. I'm still learning what to do with mine. The invitation came by text, not from Albert, from Rosemary. We're having a small dinner at Lydia's Sunday evening. Would love for you to come. No punctuation after that. No warm words. Just straight and simple. I stared at it for a moment, thought about ignoring it, but something in me wanted to go, not out of hope, but to finish something. So I replied, I'll be there. I baked a peach cobbler the afternoon of, like I used to bring to church potlucks. It wasn't a peace offering. It was just what I knew. Lydia's house was about 20 minutes from mine. When I pulled up, Albert's car was already there. I stood on the porch a second before ringing the bell. Lydia opened the door with a tight smile. Brittany, she said, so glad you could make it. I stepped in. The house smelled like a meal that had been cooked hours ago and reheated. The table was already set. The food, roast chicken, green beans, rolls, sat in serving dishes that had gone lukewarm. Rosemary greeted me with a side hug. Albert gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Eyes down. We sat. No blessing was said. No one asked if I wanted tea. I served myself and ate quietly. The food was fine, but the silence was thick. No one asked how I'd been. Most of the talk was between Rosemary and Lydia about the backyard fence needing repair, some neighborhood get-together, whose name was on what? Then Lydia looked at me and said, "I know things got a little mixed up with the deed, but you really don't need to worry yourself with all that. It's just paperwork." She smiled as she said it, like she was offering reassurance. That's when I reached into my bag. I pulled out the printed copy of the deed, the one Deacon had scanned and given me. I placed it gently on the table. No drama, no shaking hands. "I'm not worried," I said. "I just think it's important we're all honest about what happened." The room went quiet. Rosemary froze. Albert shifted in his seat. Lydia opened her mouth, then closed it. I kept my voice calm. "You don't have to explain," I said, looking at them one by one. "But you also don't get to rewrite what I did for my son." I looked at Albert. "I gave that down payment out of love. I asked for one thing, not money back, not control, just to be remembered. Instead, you gave that place to someone else and didn't even tell me." He looked away. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore. But I won't be quiet just to keep things comfortable for everybody else." Nobody spoke, not even Lydia. I pushed my chair back and stood. I brought cobbler. I said, "It's in the car if you want it." Then I leaned in and hugged Albert. I whispered in his ear, "I forgive you, but I'm not waiting anymore." Then I walked out. The air outside was cool. I didn't cry. I didn't check to see if anyone followed me. I got in my car and drove home with the windows cracked, letting the breeze carry some of the weight off me. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen and a fresh pad of paper. I started writing my will, not because I was bitter, because I was ready to decide, clearly and in my own words, what mattered and who would be part of the next chapter. At the top of the page, I wrote, "To be seen by those who see me." I listed the trust, the cabin, my home, the jewelry, the dishes Denny bought me on our 10th anniversary. I didn't cross Albert out, but I made sure nothing could be taken from me while I was still here. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it in peace. Peace that came from finally standing up and saying what was true out loud. That dinner wasn't a welcome. It was a goodbye dressed in fake smiles. And I finally gave myself permission to leave the table. Would you stay at a table where you're only valued when you're useful, or would you build a new one? Comment below. Be honest. Be brave. It's been a year. The seasons turned over quiet and steady like they always do. And now I'm sitting in a little cabin just outside Bell Buckle, Tennessee. The same one Denny left me, the one with the creaky floorboards, pine walls, and that old stone fireplace that smokes a little if you don't crack the back window. Tonight, the table is full, not just with food, though we've got plenty of that. Ham, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, cornbread, deviled eggs, and 2 sweet potato pies cooling on the counter. No, this table is full of laughter, full of stories, full of women who know how to make a house feel like home. Miriam from church brought her famous apple slaw. Hazel made green bean casserole and said she'd only stay for an hour. That was 3 hours ago. There's also Trina, a single mom I met through the quilting group. She came with her 2 kids and a store-bought cheesecake that was half melted but loved all the same. We pulled up extra chairs, laid out mismatched plates, used tea towels for napkins. Nobody cared. Nobody asked where my son was. They just asked if I needed help stirring the gravy. It wasn't a holiday built around tradition or expectations. It was a holiday built around choice. My choice. Earlier that morning, I went out and screwed my name onto the mailbox. Not in cursive, not fancy, just a small metal plate. Brittany J. McCain. It mattered to me that people would know this was mine. I paid for none of it, yet it cost me everything. I still haven't heard from Albert. Not a phone call, not a visit, just a Christmas card in the mail, plain, red, no signature. Inside it just said, "Wishing you peace this season." No, love, Albert. No, from us. Just those 6 words. I filed it in the drawer where I keep the scanned deed, and the notebook, not out of anger, just because it belongs there, in the part of my life where things went quiet. Some days I miss him. Not the man who made excuses, the boy who used to beg me for one more bedtime story. But you can miss someone and still understand why you had to let go. Because love isn't meant to be begged for, and presents shouldn't come with conditions. Tonight, as the women laughed around the table, I looked around and realized I didn't lose everything. I found something else. I found a new kind of family, the kind that shows up with rolls still warm and hands that don't hesitate to pass you the butter, the kind that doesn't need explanations or apologies. After everyone left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, the kind Denny used to call sleepy water. The stars were bright over the hills. I could hear a coyote way off in the trees, and I thought to myself, they gave my gift to someone else, but I gave myself back to me. That's something Lydia can't touch, something no deed can erase, because this cabin isn't just property. It's proof that I wasn't forgotten, that love sometimes waits for the dust to settle before it speaks. I opened the envelope Denny left me that night, the one Harold gave me. Inside was a letter, folded 3 times, handwritten in blue ink. He wrote, "Britt, I know how strong you are, but just in case they forget, here's something that never will. Let this place remind you that you were never second choice. You've always been the heart of this family, whether they remember it or not. Love builds, and sometimes it builds a shelter for one. Live well, sweetheart. Don't wait on anyone to see you. Just keep showing up as yourself." That's always been enough. I cried as I read it, not the kind of cry that hurts, the kind that releases, the kind that makes room. This year, I didn't buy gifts, didn't hang stockings, didn't write out holiday cards hoping for replies. Instead, I opened my doors, fed people who needed a meal, listened to women tell the truth about what they'd lost, what they'd survived, and I let my name sit quietly on the mailbox, not as a reminder of what I gave up, but of what I reclaimed. If you've ever had to walk away from the people you raised, just to remember who raised you, yourself, then share, and subscribe. Not for me, for every mother sitting with questions she never got answers to. And if you don't subscribe, scroll down and tell me why. Say it in the comments. I'll be reading.